A huge weather pattern change is happening across the United States right now, and the result will be multiple storms capable of heavy snow and severe weather over the next couple of weeks. The first storm arrives today, where an atmospheric river is expected to deliver extreme snowfall out west, with up to 8 feet of snow possible in the higher elevations over the next 10 days. As this storm moves to the east, it will tap into a much sharper temperature contrast across the central United States. With cold air to the north and warm Gulf moisture to the south, if all the ingredients come together, this storm could lead to a widespread severe weather threat across the south-central United States, including areas like Abilene, Dallas, Austin, and Shreveport, with the potential for damaging winds, large hail, and a few tornadoes. But this is just the beginning of a very active weather pattern, as multiple large storms are expected to move out of the Pacific Ocean and into the United States next week. Each of these storms will have access to similar atmospheric ingredients, increasing the potential for repeat scenarios that include heavy snow on the cold side and the risk of thunderstorms on the warm side. I want to begin today's forecast by talking more about our temperature trends over the next 7 days, as this will really determine who's going to have the possibility of some big snow and who's going to be talking about severe weather. This is what we're looking at today. We have a very large area of warm air that is built all across the Great Plains. We also have a winter weather event that just made its way through the Northeast, and we also have cold air on the backside of that low-pressure system, which is going to bring colder temperatures today and tomorrow, basically all up and down the East Coast. Once we go into Thursday and Friday, that warm air in the Great Plains will continue to build, and then we'll eventually see some moisture coming out of the Pacific. That'll kind of suppress our warm air, and it will eventually get colder across areas near the Rockies. This is going to allow for an increasing risk of snowfall, especially this weekend and into early next week. But this heat wave that we are dealing with, all across the Great Plains in the Midwest, will allow for the potential of severe weather this weekend and even possibly next week. So, this is going to be something that we need to keep an eye on eventually as we go into next week. Just look at the weather. It's not going to really change a whole lot. All across the Great Plains in the Midwest, we'll be dealing with some very warm weather for this time of the year. Some areas as far north as Minnesota could reach the low 70s for high temperatures by Tuesday of next week, which is just unbelievable for this time of the year. Again, we are talking about mid-February, with 70s as far north as Minnesota. That would be unbelievable. Behind this, we will likely start to see some Arctic air try to spill back into the United States. However, a large low-pressure system will likely develop back over in California to start next week. That should make its way up into the northern plains in the Midwest. That will pull a lot of warm air off to the north. And then, on the backside of that storm system, we should see some cold air. But if this storm system goes further north, that's going to allow for a much weaker Arctic blast to actually happen. So, as of right now, it does not appear as if we're going to have any sort of major Arctic blast in the horizon. I still think the last week, or maybe around the last week of February, will at least have some sort of shot of cold air that'll bring a much better shot of snow further south. I do want to point out that we are going to have record-breaking heat potential by the beginning of next week across the northern plains. Areas like Minnesota, the Dakotas, and even Iowa will be as much as 40 to 45 degrees above average. That means high temperatures could make their way into the 70s. Even Tuesday is going to remain very warm all across the northern plains. I do want to point out that the GFS model has this very warm air a little bit further north than the European model. So, there could be some changes to the forecast. It's really all going to come down, though, to that large storm that's back over in California that's going to form by the beginning of next week. And depending on the trajectory of that, it could bring a lot of snow to some of you. But it also could bring a rare severe weather threat further to the north than what we usually see during this time of the year. Eventually, during the middle and end of next week, that warm air will likely stick around. I do think we'll start to see much more wintry-type weather pattern during the last week of February. It's really only a matter of time. If we go the entire month of February without any sort of major winter storms in the United States, I would be personally shocked. If I didn't put a date on this map, or if you didn't know today was February 11th, you would probably be thinking this looks like March. And it really does. I mean, we have high temperatures all the way back up into North and South Dakota, reaching the 50s today. And that's going to continue all the way into the weekend. By early next week is when we could be talking about a historic heat wave for this time of the year. We're going to be talking 60s and 70s as far north as Omaha. Even Minneapolis could be near 60 degrees on Monday. And then by Tuesday could even be warmer. We could be talking about 67 degrees in southeast South Dakota, mid to upper 70s and low 80s all the way down in the south. This would be really crazy if it ends up verifying in a little under a week from now. Over the next 7 days, we are going to have several shots of snow and rain and even severe weather in the United States. And that all has to do with a bunch of moisture that'll be coming out of the Pacific Ocean. This will be most notable Friday through Sunday here across the southern plains and the southeast, where a severe weather setup is on the table, which will begin Friday and go all the way into Sunday. The amount of moisture that we will have in place by Saturday will be plenty sufficient for at least some scattered severe storms from Texas back into Mississippi. Eventually, by next week, this is not the only storm we're talking about, because we'll have more moisture coming out of the Pacific. And that should form a pretty significant storm system along the west coast to begin next week. And then eventually, that should move into the northern plains, Midwest, and perhaps all the way into the Ohio Valley in the northeast, with the possibility of snow, maybe even some freezing rain. And we can't even rule out some storms or even severe weather out of this system with how warm it is going to be so far off to the north. Granted, this is still about 7 days from now, so things could definitely change. But I do think we will continue to have several storm systems next week that do end up impacting the United States. Let's talk more about what is upcoming in terms of large storm systems. And we'll begin with what is happening today. We already have a lot of snow and as well as rain falling across the Rockies in the west coast. This is going to be a snow spot over the next 7 to 10 days. We're talking about a snow bomb that is basically going to happen over here, where tons of heavy snow is coming as we have a lot of moisture coming out of the Pacific, and basically a pretty intense atmospheric river that'll be setting up here across the western tier of the country. On the flip side, we still have some light to moderate snow across the northeast today. Some light showers back across the southeast. Nothing too crazy, though, across the board. By Thursday and Friday, that moisture that is back over along the west coast will eventually organize into a small little storm system just off to the west of Texas. And we are expecting at least a low-end threat of severe weather on Friday across very far western Texas, mainly near the Midland area, where large hail and maybe a brief spin-up will be on the table. By late Friday and Saturday, this storm system will organize quite a bit into a large blob of rain. This is not going to be producing any sort of significant severe weather Saturday morning, but after lunchtime on Saturday is when I think things will start to uptrend. We should have a good amount of wind shear here, across the southern plains and the deep south. I do think one of the biggest concerns right now, when it comes to the severe weather setup actually materializing, will be the instability and also the timing of this storm system. And I don't know if we're going to have the right placement of this storm system corresponding to our instability and our moisture for this to be a sufficient severe weather setup. However, I do at least think some isolated to scattered severe storms will be on the table throughout Saturday, mostly after lunchtime across this region here. So, we're talking from about Dallas-Fort Worth back towards Memphis into Little Rock, and also Shreveport, where damaging winds, hail, and maybe a few tornadoes will be on the table. But again, it's very conditional as of now. That could change, though, as we get closer. This event does have the possibility of at least a medium ceiling, meaning a possibility for a couple of strong tornadoes. It also has a very low floor, where almost nothing could happen. It's a very large range as of now. As we go to late Saturday and early Sunday, the storm system will continue to track to the east, with severe weather still on the table on Sunday, from Tennessee back into Georgia, maybe even into Florida, where damaging winds and a tornado or two will continue to be a concern. Beyond this time frame is where things get a lot more uncertain, but a lot more interesting. If you're along the East Coast, Sunday morning should be mostly rain here across the southeast. However, a few models are depicting that there could be a snow threat with this upcoming storm system. This is something we did talk about a little bit yesterday, but there is a possibility that on the northern side of the storm, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, those areas could all see a possibility of snow Sunday night into early Monday. It's too early to tell if this will exactly happen, or if it will happen at all. There are still some models that do not show this at all happening. It's going to come down, though, to the placement of this low-pressure system, how quickly it intensifies. But if it does end up taking a bit more of a turn off to the north and northeast, this will have a much better chance of producing snowfall across the northeast. So if you're anywhere back over there, definitely stay weather aware here for a possible winter storm. It's a little too early again to tell if that's exactly going to happen, but it will be something we're keeping an eye on. But this madness doesn't stop, because as we go into next week, we are expecting a pretty potent atmospheric river event to take place along the west coast. And this will lead to a lot of mountainous snowfall Monday and Tuesday. We are talking about feet of snow in the higher elevations, and I will tell you, a lot of the skiers are pretty frustrated right now, but on top of that, we are at record low amounts of snowfall in a lot of areas across the Rockies and even the Sierra Nevada. So this is big news, as we are expecting multiple days of moderate to heavy snowfall all across the Rockies back towards the west coast. This will also unleash a couple of storm systems. I am watching the northern plains in the Midwest, Tuesday into Wednesday, for at least a pretty strong low-pressure system to move through this area. There will be a possibility of some snow, maybe some storms as well. It's too uncertain at this point for exact details, as this is still about a week from now. And then eventually by Thursday and Friday of next week, things continue to stay very uncertain past this point. But the trend is that we will likely continue to see a lot of snowfall across the western tier of the country. That should start to unleash more storm systems into the United States, and therefore a much more active weather pattern should be upon us for the last couple of weeks of February. So, good news for those that want snow and active weather. Bad news for those that are enjoying the very quiet and peaceful weather for most of the country that we've been experiencing for weeks. This is pretty crazy. But over the next 7 to 10 days, we are expecting a widespread 80 to 120 inches of snow across the Sierra Nevada, back into the Cascades. And if you're back over in the Rockies, or anywhere really up into Idaho, even western Montana and some of those higher elevations, feet of snowfall are going to be on the table over the next 7 to 10 days. Again, this is really great news. I can't stress it enough. It's not just for the skiers, but we also have a water shortage problem that will develop if we do not continue to see more mountain snow here over the next few weeks. Many areas are already at record low amounts of not just snowfall, but even water for this time of the year. So, this is definitely good news. Let's hope it continues over the next few weeks. The atmospheric pattern we're seeing represents a fundamental shift from the relatively quiet weather that has dominated much of the country in recent weeks. The combination of record-breaking warmth across the northern plains, the potential for severe weather outbreaks, and the massive snowfall event unfolding across the western mountains creates a complex and dynamic situation that will require careful monitoring over the coming days and weeks. What makes this pattern particularly noteworthy is the extreme nature of the temperature departures from normal. When we're talking about temperatures 40 to 45 degrees above average across areas like Minnesota and the Dakotas, we're looking at values that are truly unprecedented for this time of year. The fact that we could see 70-degree temperatures in Minneapolis in mid-February represents a complete departure from typical winter conditions. The severe weather potential across the southern plains also deserves special attention. While the setup remains somewhat conditional, the combination of abundant moisture, strong wind shear, and the thermal contrast created by the advancing storm system provides all the ingredients necessary for significant thunderstorm development. The risk extends from Texas through Mississippi and could impact major metropolitan areas, including Dallas-Fort Worth and Memphis. Meanwhile, the western United States is preparing for what could be one of the most significant snowfall events of the winter season. The atmospheric river pattern that is developing will tap into Pacific moisture and direct it toward the Sierra Nevada and Cascade ranges, where orographic lifting will enhance precipitation and create the potential for truly massive snow accumulations.